Okay, we're going to get this started, only because you know that Jenny's always on time, and if she's not, she's crabby. Let's see her get crabby. So, we are going to do a little bit of an introduction. Some of you have an agenda. If you don't have an agenda, read your neighbors. Look to your left. Do you know your neighbor? Look to your right. Do you know your neighbor? If you don't know your neighbors, you need to introduce yourself. Right now. All right, so we're going to start over here.
I'm Gail Griffin. I'm your state senator for this District 14. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see everybody. That's another great showing. So we're here to listen and we'll give some information in a little bit.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Brow. I'm the statewide Good Neighbor Authority Coordinator for the Department of Forestry and Fire Management. And Good Neighbor Authority is a program that allows the state to partner with federal entities to implement work on the ground. So we're looking forward to meeting with you all today. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is CJ Karamarjan. I'm the District Director for Congresswoman Martha McSally.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Borozon, and I serve as Chief of Staff to Pima County Supervisor Steve Christie, and I'm a devout Lemonite.
She really is.
Bill Piac Woods, part of the Mount Lemon Economic Board.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Whitney. I'm the State Forester for Arizona, your State Forester, and I'm proud to introduce a couple more of my staff. Happy to be here with you.
My name is Myra Moreno, and I recognize some of you from a class I just taught not too long ago. Hi, hello. Happy to see you guys here. I am right now the acting manager, district manager, as everybody is on different states fighting fires. And my normal day job is fuels and fire prevention.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Vandermark. I'm a service forester with the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management in Yavapai and Mojave counties, and also statewide biomass utilization coordinator. And I've worked with a lot of communities doing forest stewardship work using forestry machines and crews in residential neighborhoods. So thank you for the opportunity.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Charles Woodard. Everybody calls me CJ. I'm the new district ranger on the Santa Catalina Ranger District.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kerwin Dewberry. I'm the forest supervisor on the Coronado National Forest and located out of the headquarters offices in Tucson. So,
Joe Gunya, Fire Chief, Mount Lemon Fire.
Bob Zimmerman, and I'm her father.
Matthew Grossman, Business Economic Association.
And he's so smart, it's weird. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Jeff, did you want to help me with this?
Yes, ma'am.
So please rise. We are also going to stand. We're also going to do a moment of silence. Everyone knows that there's a boatload of fires, and thank goodness it's not here, but it is happening. So please bow your head for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. All right. Have a seat. Be patient. It's Bill's turn.
We got one more late arrival.
Am I singing? What am I doing?
Chris Stoller, Tucson Office Director for Senator Jeff Flake.
It's really tough opening up a meeting and being jovial when a grandmother and 2 kids die in a fire. And that's really tough. That's really tough. And we have to think about the family and their loss. I do want to read a letter that we're sending to the governor as of today. Dear Governor Ducey, thank you for your leadership and support to assist in protecting our forests, especially the Coronado National Forest, specifically Mount Lemmon. We dodged a potential catastrophic fire this year, which if you had occurred would have devastated our watershed, buried our town, and delivered an economic blow to the region of southeast Arizona that we would never recovered from. Senator Gail Griffin, who has led this team and would have seemed that she would have been leading a lot of very positive projects throughout the state. She deserves a standing ovation, but I know that she is too busy to stop for applause or recognition. Well, since she's here, I think she needs applause and recognition. Please stand. Everybody please stand. She's passed over 29 water bills. Just bills? Okay. To continue on with this letter, another person that we have a strong admiration for is your state forester, Jeff Whitney, who has a real heart for the forest and the men and women associated with the forest. His heart is truly broken over the loss during the Yarnell fire, which he never wants to see again. Jeff? Where are you?
Remain seated. Let's move on.
Okay, Jeff. Kerwin Dewberry, our forest supervisor, is the best we've had in the last 40 years. We thank you so much for him and want him for the next 40 years, and all of his staff, if possible, especially Mr. C.J. Woodard, our district ranger. Pima County has elected a county supervisor that makes good on his word, Steve Christie. He has sent Ms. Beth Borzon, Chief of Staff, and Patrick Cavanaugh, Deputy Director at the Economic Development Council, to help us move forward with growth, planning, and tourism. The citizens of Arizona need to realize that we have a treasure here in southern Arizona, as both you and your staff already know. Mount Lemmon is one of the only mountains in North America that has 7 biomes on one mountain road, 40 minutes from the base to the top, that contains over 4,000 species of plants and animals. To understand how extraordinary that is, there are only 3,000 different species of plants and animals east of the Mississippi. It was not only courageous but heroic of you and your staff to provide support to assist in protecting our mountain. Thank you from all of us here in Tucson and Mount Lemmon. Government can really work for all the people of Arizona, not just Phoenix metro area. Sincerely, and of course the board signed off on this. Thank you very much. Now the jacket comes off. Next slide, please. I thought about legacy and stewardship all through and talking to a variety of people throughout the state. And that's what we have to consider with this mountain. We're passing off a great mountain, and we have to be good stewards. Next slide, please. In this slide, I don't know if you can see it, but as you can see, there's a lot of different fires in through here, and I want to tell a story about this. Every time I see this graph, I think of a story of a kid back in the late 50s that thought he was invulnerable to being hurt. He grew up in a neighborhood in North St. Louis, and he and his friends went out on excursions on their bikes. And one day he found out that this trolley car was going to be removed from the trolley system, and he wanted to get a souvenir. And so he and his friends went to this track that had a left-hand turn, and they rode their bikes to this trolley car, and it had rained the night before, and he decided to crawl on his belly to the tracks and to see if he could place a penny on the rail and to see if the trolley car could go ahead and smash the penny and if he could get away with that souvenir before they took the trolley car offline. So he and his friends rode out to the trolley car track, crawled on his belly to the trolley car, and of course the weeds had grown up and the maintenance was poor on the track, and he crawled to the track and he very carefully placed that penny on the track, and his friends kept pushing him on, calling him chicken and so on and so forth. So he stood there, and, or I should say he laid there and waited for the trolley. And as the trolley approached, he could feel the vibration in his chest, and he could feel the vibration on the track. And he knew that that trolley was coming slowly but surely with that giant wheel. And he knew that that trolley could crush his hand, but he wanted that souvenir. And as the trolley turned the corner, he saw the big wheel of the trolley. And he held that penny, he held that penny. And as the trolley came over, crushed the penny, and he looked down at his hand, and he saw that he had all his fingers. He looked at the penny, and he had the penny. And he raised it up, and he showed his friends he had that souvenir. Little did he know that he could have easily lost his hand or lost his arm, or even worse, the trolley conductor could have slammed on the brakes and the trolley could have jumped the tracks and fallen over. Well, every time I see this graph, I think of the people of the United States not realizing, unassuming what the potential is in this graph. Like a seismograph, if we were in San Francisco, people would worry about earthquakes as far as what's happening here. Or if it was in Tokyo, if an earthquake was coming. But a major fire might be coming. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Next slide, please. Our government has had 110 years of suppression. From a blank check policy of 69 years to a fire exclusion crusade of 27 years, from a federal 10 a.m. policy of 42 years to a emergency contingency fund unofficial blank check. And as you know, the fires are increasing and increasing and increasing. Fire suppression from 2000 to 2017, the cost exceeded from $1 billion 14 times to $1.5 billion 10 times. And that's according to the United States Forest Service. Next slide, please. Jack Cohen, retired wildland forest research scientist, at his own retirement party. Everybody was having a great time. All of a sudden it became very silent because he, in his retirement speech, he mentioned the fact that the last 100 years, between 44 million and 106 million acres are burned every year due to lightning strikes and human-caused fires. Between 2005 and 2015, the total area burned in Alaska and lower 48 states was about 9.6 million acres per year. That means the result is much of America's forests were now overgrown, a tinderbox waiting to explode. So when I made this statement before, somebody asked me, well, what does that actually mean in numbers? So I went ahead and ran the numbers. Next slide, please. 44 million plus 106 million is 75 million acres on average per year of understory plants and ladder fuels. That's a total inventory of 750 million acres average during a period of 2005 to 2015. Well, if you subtract out 100 million acres, the average is 650 million acres during that 10-year period, or 87% of the total land mass of forests in the United States, the lower 48 and Alaska, or at a minimum of 440 million acres, less 100 million acres, 45% at the low end. So in essence, the United States has 155 million acres, or 155 national forests containing almost 190 million acres, or 25%. Next slide, please. So at what cost? In 1871, the Peshtigo fire, 1,700 to 2,500 people were dead in Wisconsin. 1,875 square miles consumed the area 50% larger than Rhode Island. 1871, Great Michigan Fire, 500 plus dead in Michigan, 3,900 square miles consumed. In 1910, the big blow-up, or the Devil's Broom, Washington, northern Idaho, western Montana, we lost almost 100 people, most of them firefighters. 4,700 square miles was consumed. The loss of life, excluding civilians, firefighters, as you can see, the graph is increasing from all the way up to 2000, from 1910 all the way up to 2010. Next slide, please. So 340 to 650 million acres of inventory of understory and ladder fuels. What could possibly go wrong? And by the way, my mother's still rolling over in grave about that kid that squashed that penny with the trolley car. Next slide. Suppression costs are just the tip of the expense chart. The Rodeo Chudesky fire, the suppression cost was 15%. The direct costs were 40%. Rehabilitation was 45%. The total cost of that fire was $308 million. The last 10 years, based on the Forest Service estimates, we spent over $113 billion on forest fires. The next 10 years, if Mr. Cohen's correct, we're looking at anywhere between $0.23 to $0.43 trillion in expenses. Next slide, please. Wildfires release as much CO2 as cars. A 2007 study estimated the lower 48 plus Alaska released 290 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. Severe forest fires, a season in one state produces as much annual emissions as the entire transportation and or the energy sector of that state. 2018, the study had the same conclusion, the NCAR wrote. Next slide, please. In North Carolina, they were doing prescribed burns, and they found out due to the prescribed burns that they increased the watershed, the quality of the water, and the amount of water out of the watersheds. Next slide, please. It all comes down to a healthy forest, 80 trees per acre. Next slide. This is the norm, 1,200 trees per acre. Dr. Falk has pointed out that we have as close as up here on the mountain as 4,000 trees per acre. Next slide. So it comes down to lives, forest, water, property, and air quality. Next slide. Prevention versus suppression. Next slide, please. This is the old-fashioned management of natural fires. This is the new improved management of natural fires. As you can see, rakes, spray cans, this is what we'd like to see in our forests in the future. Next slide, please. Hopefully the political landscape will change. Next slide. My wife and I have coffee every morning, or I have coffee, she has tea, and she pointed out to me something that's pretty well straightforward, and that is the history of what's gone on, and that is our representatives in Washington, D.C., due to the Chicago fire, Boston fire, Montreal fire, historically, had outlawed major fires. So they were called urbanites. In Washington, D.C., they outlawed major fires. So for 110 years, they put together titanic policies to suppress fires. With well-intentioned policies, they started selling lumber. The lumber companies, of course, overstepped their boundaries. They started clear cutting. When you start clear cutting, you have erosion problems, and you have problems with the environment. And the conservation and environmental groups naturally, under the circumstances, became zealous in their efforts to stop cutting in the forest. Catastrophic forest fires started to eat away at any management budgets, including energy funds, emergency funds, and we are now at a legislative stalemate. The forest has now become a tinderbox ready to explode. Next slide, please. Why does 2936 seem to be losing traction? Well, I knew we were losing traction as soon as Stephen Pierce put in an amendment. Why put in an amendment if you think a bill is going to pass? It just doesn't make any sense. The pilot program for the Lincoln National Forest, Kabbalah, and Gila National Forest just didn't get any movement. Representative mentioned that in 2009, the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program treated about 1.45 million acres of national forest and improvement of 1.33 million acres of wildlife habitat. Well, with the backdrop of 340 to 650 million acres of understory and ladder fuels in the inventory, that's like somebody standing on the deck of the Titanic with a bucket of water saying he saved the day. It's just not enough. Another representative said, my district experienced the worst wildfires in California history. The fires in my district burned close to 300,000 acres, killed 43 people, forced more than 100,000 people to evacuate. Decimated some 7,000 homes, left 10,000 people homeless. I am a no. Nothing in this bill today could have prevented the fires we have experienced. Next slide. Closer look, Representative Pierce may have felt that 2936 may have not had a chance of passing the Senate, therefore the pilot program may be the only chance for his state, New Mexico, to secure funds to clean up the 3 national forests. Both the House and the Senate understand there's a significant problem with our forests, but other issues take more of a priority than what can potentially happen, not what actually is happening. Misinformation is more available than ever before, or they would act immediately. Many of our representatives and senators have very strong convictions, and it seems we're at a stalemate, and our citizens and our forests are doomed if we don't break the deadlock. Next slide. I'd like to introduce Charles Woodard. When I met Charles, he was all smiles. When we sat down in a meeting, he had such a frown on his face. I thought he was going to kill me. But then he smiled again, and I knew we were okay. Charles, would you like to come up and talk about prescribed burns?
Thanks, Bill, for that background information. So what I've handed out today is something that you can find on Forest Service website that talks about prescribed fire just nationally and everything. I believe most people in here might have gotten a copy. I printed out like 30 or 35 of them, so hopefully people have access to it. So the meeting, I had a scowl on my face, and was where I found out that I'd be doing this presentation for y'all today. So my wife actually says, yeah, I kind of do have a scowl on my face most of the time, but please, don't worry about that. I am a smiler. I do like to smile, and I am a very nice person and personable. So just want to put that out there as well. So I want to talk to you all about prescribed fire. Give you a little background on me. I'm born and raised in Mississippi, where we burn a lot. That's basically how we treat a lot of our forests, how land managers, private and federal and state, treat a lot of our fuels for catastrophic wildfire. So one unit I was on, what was it? So on the DeSoto National Forest, they have roughly 365,000 acres. Well, they intentionally burned about 110,000 acres of it every year for prevention. So, go ahead. So what is, and I'm gonna walk around a little bit, because that's how I like to do. So what is prescribed fire? So fire applied in a skillful manner to wildland fuels in a predetermined place under exacting weather conditions to achieve specific management objectives. Can you all hear me? Yeah. All right. So I'd rather go on without the mic because I like to walk around the room. So that's what prescribed fire is, and that's what we do. Go ahead. So why prescribed fire? You know, there are several reasons that we use prescribed fire on the ground. I'll talk about one in terms of reducing hazardous fuels. We do site preparation before we burn a site. So we remove down logs, down debris. We might go in and set lines so we can burn off of those lines and do things like that prior to the fire. It improves wildlife habitat. So dense understory, dense woods are not conducive to wildlife. So yeah, they need cover, but they also like to go out in open areas and forage. So it helps invigorate vegetation. So manage competing vegetation. So control disease. So fire, prescribed fire can cull trees with diseases or species with diseases at that particular time. Improve forage and grazing habitats. So we not only do we have national forests, we have national grasslands. So on the grasslands, we burn a lot of that as well. We burn riparian areas on grasslands and make them more productive, so we can get more stems per acre and things like that. To enhance the appearance and improve access. So that's kind of a double-edged sword, not get into that, because what it does is, let's say you have an OHV trail, and it's dense all around, and then you burn it out. Or then maybe somebody wants to just cut across the forest, you know, and make a new route. So it could be a double-edged sword there. Perpetuate fire-adapted and dependent species. In the south, the big one is longleaf pine. Out here we have ponderosa pine. And then the Arizona cypress is actually serotinous, so it only reproduces when it gets fire. The cones are only open when we have fire. And then also to manage certain endangered species. So the Mexican spotted owl responds well to prescribed fire if it's done outside of its breeding season. Down south, we have the red cockaded woodpecker, which is highly fire adapted. Next slide, please. So hazardous fuel reductions, fire return intervals. So fire return intervals is basically how often a place naturally burns. Okay, so here, I've talked to people, try to get some history. So here we're looking at intervals in ponderosa pines, like every 7 to 15 years, low intensity fire should come through. And then in the mixed conifer, we're looking at 10 to 25 years. We should have some low intensity fire come through there as well. So like it says, it's limited benefit to hardwood forests. A lot of times we use it in pine forests to set back those hardwoods coming in, those encroaching hardwoods. And then a patchy burn is okay. So we might go out, let's say we use the helicopter this time. So there are plastic spears that are used by the helicopter to shoot out in the units to light fires. So depending on if we're using that firing technique, then you might get an area that burns, and and you might get areas that don't burn. You get a riparian area that might not burn, where the fire might back down into it as far as it needs to. And then if it does need to burn at a particular time, it doesn't burn. But what that does is create edge for wildlife. You know, there's cover there, and there's area for them to go forward. So we go to the next slide. So site preparation, you know, reducing and removing log slash, reduces competition for seedlings and roundabout. Helps to facilitate some of the planting. So we do some roller drum chopping in places to turn the site over, to help turn the site over. And then can better stimulate quality sprouts. So like I said, we burn riparian areas that might have gone destiny, or they might have stopped producing as much fruit as they should down there for wildlife. So when you burn it over, it increases the vigor in that particular area. Next slide. So as I talked about wildlife habitat, it talks about the patchy burns, it talks about deer, turkey, Mexican spotted owl, fruit and seed production, stimulated like I just said. And then it also have increased herbs and legumes in terms of, and forbs on the ground. So you'll have grasses coming back in areas where you might not have seen grass in forever. Okay, go ahead. So like I said earlier, in terms of reducing woody understory, it kind of favors fire-tolerant species, ponderosa pine, Arizona cypress. Effective in controlling hardwoods less than 3 foot at ground level. So there are 2 different ways we like to burn. So there are dormant season burns, typically in the fall. What it'll do is it'll clear area out, but it won't kill it off. So what'll happen is we might burn a lot of oak scrub. Well, that oak scrub will come back the same way the next year for the most part. It'll set it back a little bit, but not that much. Whereas if we burn it during the growing season, it's a lot hotter fire, okay? But it cools it. It really knocks it back. It can kill it. You know, that's a double-edged sword as well, because you might have some undesirable species that may come in there that we might not have seen there prior to with invasives. So it improves forage as well. Like I said, grasses and forbs, and removes dead material out and about on the ground. Next slide, please, Matt. So it enhances the appearance of the forest. So, you know, forests that are dense, people really don't like to go and hike through those. You think about ticks and things like that. People don't really like hiking through those areas. But when you do burn it, it opens it up. But like I said earlier, that can also cause issues. You know, hunters love it because they get open sight lines. Archery hunters really love it. They get really open sight lines, okay? But then you could have some recreationists, mountain bikers, or people on OHVs, and I'm not picking on anybody in here, but that's what can happen. They can start cutting across the forest and making an undesirable trail. Next slide, please. Hit it again. So I just talked about improving access, easier travel for hikers. So if you like to get about, you know, it's less ground material on if it's a productive burn, it's less ground material, it's less logs for you to hop over and hike over and through, and better sight lines for hunters. Should be another. There you go. So yeah, fire adapted species. We talked about the ponderosa pine and Arizona cypress, but you got southern yellow pine down south where we do a whole lot of burning and things like that. So, like we said, under exacting conditions. So prior to us doing the burn, there's a lot of science that goes into it. You know, because people tend to get a little scared when we say we're gonna light the forest on fire intentionally. But there's a lot of background work that's done, a lot of leg work that's done. So part of the plan is there's a burn prescription that's written by a qualified burn boss. And that burn boss has extensive experience burning. Typically, they've been around fire, you know, about 15 years. depending on where you are. In areas that burn a lot, it takes you 7 to 8 years to get that level of experience before you're allowed to be able to sign off on a plan. So the pre-burn site treatments, that site prep, helps us to be able to control that fire and make sure it doesn't escape. You know, there are no guarantees in what we do with fire, but the likelihood is really low in terms of fire escaping if we're burning under the right conditions. So we have the equipment designated and ready, personnel is identified and trained. We have all the approved permits, so we have to apply for a smoke permit. Smoke management is a big part of prescribed burning. You know, we might burn up here, but we don't want that smoke settling down in Tucson, or over in Happy Valley or anything, or just settling over here, over the mountain, okay? So the authorities and interested parties are identified. So we talk to the state, we'll talk to the county, you all will know, the sheriff's department will know. Probably even, we might end up having to let the Air Force Base know we're putting smoke in the air at that particular time. So everybody knows. And then the latest forecast is checked in. And those two things are done the day prior and the day of. Because the go, no go can be the day of. So the day before we're like, okay, fine. Maybe we don't have the conditions that day, but then the next day we do have the conditions, or vice versa. Or it could be we never had the conditions and we don't do the burn at all. Okay? Next slide, please. Hit it again. I want to show. It didn't show. So what this is a short video, about 2 minutes. I believe the individual is off the Carson National Forest, talking about their burn plan. Some burn strategies.
My name is James Arciniega, and I'm a fuels planner for the Carson National Forest. Fuels are live and dead vegetation. So in the forest, that's dry grass, standing dead trees, live trees, shrubs. Typically, we do a lot of vegetation management activities like timber harvesting, fuels reduction, and prescribed fire. If you think of the forest as your yard, what if you never mowed your lawn? What if you never trimmed the hedges? What if you let it go? Now you run a fire through there, and how might you expect your yard to burn? Well, the forest is similar. If we don't allow fire to clean up our yard, so to speak, then it's going to be overgrown and unhealthy. There's a limited amount of water and nutrients. So when you reduce the competition, when you have fewer trees competing for the same amount of water and the same amount of nutrients, the residual trees tend to respond vigorously. They benefit from the reduction in density. Surface fires tend to reduce fuel loading, especially initially. They'll consume down logs, pine needles, sticks. They also are cleansing in a sense that they might kill trees that are less vigorous, say a ponderosa pine that's riddled with mistletoe. Short term, you'll see much more green in the understory, as well as some red pine needles and all from the base of the canopy being scorched and the trees dropping their needles. In 2 years, I would expect it to be very similar. Much more green in the understory than there is today. More of an abundance of grass and herbaceous species, as well as some shrubs. In general, we're trying to promote resilient forests, ones that would bounce back from a disturbance.
So basically, what's going across the top is a bunch of question marks, not really showing up. So if you guys have any questions about anything, yes, Sally.
So I'm assuming with your presentation that...
All right, for today, everything is looking good. The north side of the fire up here is vision out.
Another video.
You maybe can tell us then about your plans
FMO, John Manta, is working on the plan for it right now. What goes on with thinning treatments like that is we have to wait until that's cured. I don't know if it'll be ready this fall to burn or not. Those are questions that I'm asking right now in terms of like, are we gonna be ready to burn these this fall? Are we gonna be able to burn them this spring? It could be that we burn those piles in the spring. So you will be seeing smoking, intentional smoke in the air coming off of those piles eventually. Maybe not this year, but most definitely next year, if not this year. But like I said, we might get, you know, the weather, the proper conditions to burn that this year, and then we might not. So it just varies. That's the thing about burning. There's no guarantee. We just plan for it, and hopefully we get the right windows, and then we can do so. There's also, we're also planning a prescribed burn in pepper sauce. So it'll be a broadcast burn, which is kind of what you saw in that video. Roughly 2,500 acres is what we're planning to burn. So there's a prescription that's being written for it right now as well.
Is that planned for hopefully fall?
So the FMO wants to do it for the resource benefit that we're looking for. We're looking at doing it in the fall. We're thinking that a spring burn might kill off too much.
Have you identified other areas of the mountain that are next in line or most vulnerable and needing to be burned sooner rather than later?
So we do a combination of treatments here. I really want to talk about prescribed burning today because that's kind of, we're going to start introducing fire a little more on the landscape here. So we also do hand thinning and piling, what you see in Marshall Gulch. Lop and scatter, which can be a site prep technique. If there's not enough ground fuel out there already, we might go through a unit and cut things up and put fuels on the ground so it can carry. There can also be mastication that can happen, just basically restructuring that fuel through machinery. So there are several treatments that are planning to go on around here. One being, you guys have seen what's going on with Marshall Gulch and then the big fuel break along Radio Ridge that they built. So next in line would be Summerhaven Northwest, which is this area out here that we're talking about treating up by for water tower up top.
So since there's no guarantees of burning that close to the village,
well, we won't be burning. We're not planning to burn that unit. So we're planning to hand treat that unit. So it'll be pile and burn similar to Marshall Gulch.
So CJ, how far, if you're doing a prescribed burn like we saw, how far from the village would you be doing this?
It could vary. So it all varies off comfort level. So there's an article written by a sociologist that talks about burning down south. Where it basically says we burn because our pappies burn the woods. It's basically the name of the article. Our pappies burn the woods. As people get more comfortable with it, we might get closer and closer to people's houses or people's property. I won't say houses, I say property line. Where I'm from, the people say, you're not burning enough. You're not burning enough. We need you to burn more. So they actually implore us to burn off their property lines and use those as lines. So it could be that we do some site prep or put in a line next to private property, per se, but we won't be burning on the private property. And we would only burn in certain winds. So we're carrying the smoke away and carrying the flames away from the property. But it's all about, as you all get more comfortable with it and maybe trust us a little more, then maybe we get a little more aggressive within those prescriptions. So we'll be within our parameters, but maybe we get a little more aggressive later down the road.
Today, I want to thank you for taking down to Marshall Gulch and the Red Trail. It was fantastic. We appreciate the time to get it out and clean it out.
Thank you. So I want to thank you for that, but I would ask that you not really thank me so much or thank Kerwin so much, but thank those people that you see out here every day. Every time you see them, thank them, because they're the ones out here doing the work and getting it done. I'm kind of reaping the benefits of a lot of hard work over the last 10 years. I feel guilty getting some of this praise because I really didn't have a hand in it. It was my predecessors and the people before me who did it. So, you know, you just pay homage to them because they put in all the hard work and the lead work.
My name is Sue and I'm from Soldiers Camp, and I can speak to how close they can burn the piles during the Spencer Bigelow project. We had thinning in among our cabins, and I had piles like 20, 25 feet away from my cabin. It was perfectly fine because of how and when they decided to burn it. So that is a big part of us, is knowing that they know.
There's a lot of science involved.
You are burning close to the village, you're not doing respect burns across the ground, piles.
It could, right now we're doing pile. Right now we're pile burn. And it's, for us, it's comfort level. For you all, it's comfort level once we get used to implementing and putting fire on the ground in this terrain. You know, so it'll just vary. You know, there's several different types of fire in terms of, you know, whether we burn something with wind or we allow something to back down the hill into the ground.
What time of day do you typically burn, in the morning, in the evening?
So, you know, way back when, we used to burn at night. We don't burn at night anymore. And my boss might be able to correct me on that in terms of whether or not he will allow us to burn at night at all. But typically, they'll light a test fire probably around 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. And then you based off that, you know if you have the conditions to burn at night. So there'll be smoke at night, but you wouldn't be lighting any fire at night.
Right. The burn piles, there's a lot of burn piles around here. I assume you burn, you know, like a few of them at a time, and you have people there on hand as they're burning. Can you talk a little bit about how that proceeds?
So it's based on how much we burn. It's based on how many resources we have at that particular time. So let's say it's ideal and we're lucky enough. Okay. Let's say what you see down in Marshall Gulch. Say we can burn all in one day. Requires a whole lot of resources to do something like that in order for us to be able to do that. But typically, they'll plot around and they'll figure out, based on the resources that they have, how many piles they can burn that day. So it could be an operation where I've been in places where we burn 50 to 60 piles at one day. We might be able to treat the whole area in one day. We burn it all in one day. Or I've been in places where that 50 or 60 piles might take a week, based off the resources that we have. A lot of times when we do pile burning, as you saw on that one slide, it's done with snow on the ground. You know, so you'll see it with snow on the ground. Well, if you got snow around here, if we have snow that year. But the conditions that we call for, we'll burn within those conditions.
So I can see the piles, CJ. The piles are made by the police we're talking about.
Yes.
It's all on the road.
So they're TPs. Hey, Matt, can you pull that slide back up with the pile in it? Right there. That's what the piles look like.
And that's a safer way of burning than a ground fire.
They're both safe ways of burning. Anything can happen. You know, we plan to make sure that we have contingencies and that we can prevent a prescribed fire from turning into a wildfire. You know, but there are no guarantees. I can't sit here and guarantee you that it won't turn, that something won't turn into a wildfire. I can't make that guarantee. Go ahead.
It seems like if you're paying that much attention to it, the odds are better of prescribed burn than wildfire.
Odds are way better in a prescribed burn in terms of getting the results that we want and keeping it in control. Now we do have natural ignitions that we also can manage for research benefit as well. So there could have been a lightning caused fire that we might manage, but you all would know if we're doing something.
A couple of questions. When is the last time a prescribed fire turned into a wildfire? I mean, what is the track record of this?
Kerwin. You know any date on that? I gotta ask because
Well, if you
the
can't,
the
if you
last
can't
one,
think of one, maybe that's a good
yeah,
sign.
the last one that I can recall is what happened in Lemon, South Dakota in like 2012. That's the last one I can recall.
Yeah, so we don't have data on that. I think that if you look just at the Coronado, we've been doing a lot of burning. We haven't had any that turned since I've been here during my tenure, and I don't know, slightly before I got here, I don't think we had any. However, I will say that as CJ is mentioning, that likelihood is always there. Those wildfires, those prescribed fires, although may be manageable, if they're outside of prescription to whatever degree that looks like, it can be declared a wildfire. So there are still ramifications to turn a fire from prescribed fire to a wildfire. And it's just not the fire behavior, but if you go outside of prescription, the weather could change. Whirlwind could pick up. Things could move. Still could be within a boundary, but the fire is now declared a wildfire. We do have contingency resources that are part of these plans that CJ is mentioning, that even with this happening here, there are contingency resources, and those contingency resources, my expectation is not they are located in Prescott to get here. There those contingency resources to help if we do declare a wildfire. We're working with our local partners, Jeff and others. We have local fire departments that are here to help us as well. So it's not just what we have, it's what we all have. Hopefully that's a little helpful to you.
I understand there's no guarantees, the sun will come up tomorrow or I'll wake up to see it. But you said there's contingency plans. What are some of those contingency plans? Are they already in place before the fire starts?
Great. Yes. So contingencies, like Kerwin was saying, those contingencies will be readily available if needed. If we do have to change the fire over and call it a wildfire or something like that. Like I said, like CJ was asking me, that's the last one I can recall. Is the one, I think it was in 2011 or 2012 in Lemon, South Dakota. That's the last one I can recall that there was something like that happened. But contingency could be more resources, engines, talking with Jeff in the state, making sure they have resources available, talking with Joe, making sure that the fire district up there is available, and dealing with things like that. Having our ship available down in town, so having a helicopter available. A lot of times, I think pepper sauce is going to be a helicopter ignition. So we're going to use the plastic spears to light that on fire. So what it is a spirit thing, okay? Spirit is a plastic spirit dispenser. Take those spirits, stick it in there. They go up in the helicopter and they shoot them out, like little ping pong balls. And they hit, and then they ignite. And that'll help start a fire. You can, if you look up plastic spirit dispenser on YouTube, you can see it. You can see what it looks like. They're different. There are other things like hella torches and things like that as well. I don't have that experience with. I've been around drip torches, 4-wheeler drip torch back in the day, and things like that.
So there's no high-tech resource available?
There's a lot of science and a lot of money in managing fuels these days, and trying to be, as Bill was talking about in terms of what we get from catastrophic wildfire, we're trying to prevent that going forward by treating these fuels, naturally. The indigenous people use fire to manage the lands, and we need to do the same thing.
So, I was going to say, the second question is, have you identified the total acreage within the district that is good for prescribed burns?
So there can be conditions that can lend most of the district to being, at least the higher elevations, to being conducive to prescribed burn. So we did the fire escape project. What I was talking about, paying homage to my predecessors and getting that done, is for the whole unit. There are certain fuel types in there that can allow for it. You're looking at, I'm thinking if I had to think off the top of my head, 60, 70,000 acres would probably be burned.
So, real quick, Jeff has something to say. Then I have to introduce him.
Thank you. Thanks. You know, CJ, that was a terrific presentation. By way of a little bit of additional background, about 3 years ago, I went ahead and wrote a policy for the state to also utilize prescribed fire. It's the cheapest, most ecologically appropriate tool in our toolbox. And a lot of times it gives us an opportunity to go into a lot of areas where you know, you're just not physically going to be able to get in there with mechanical equipment, that sort of thing. But Mark Grell used to work for Flagstaff Fire Department. They've done a lot of prescribed burning in and around Flagstaff after they've done some of the forest restoration work up there with the Flagstaff Watershed Protection Program. Rich Vandenmark has been working in the Prescott area, and someone asked him to make a couple of comments about the idea that, you know, you don't just you're not going to wake up someday and see that Kerwin and CJ have decided today's a good day to put fire on the ground. You're going to know about it a long time in advance, and there's also going to be some prep work that goes in front of that. That's part of the contingency planning. You get enough contingency resources identified and on hand so that they can respond if needed. But in the meantime, you've done an awful lot of fields work. So I'm going to ask Rich Vandenmark, one of our private land service foresters, to just give you a brief description of what he's doing in Prescott and how we intend to utilize prescribed fire in and around the community of Prescott, which is probably its high hazard. You guys are probably the most, probably something you don't want to be known for, but probably got the highest risk here. But the Prescott Basin is right behind you. So Rich?
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to use just a quick story to illustrate what Jeff's referring to, and also CJ and Kerwin. So on the Prescott National Forest, thank you, ma'am. On the Prescott National Forest, it's a classic urban interface zone. It's Prescott National Forest with a lot of private property kind of peppered out through there. We have some steep slope country. We have mixed con, ponderosa pine, brush, the whole drill. And mostly what we have are a lot of really motivated people, much like yourselves. So I get the great honor and pleasure to work with these people to help them practice forest stewardship. One of the camps I just recently worked on, it's called Camp Stein, or Springs Camp, and it's about a 57-acre camp out on the west side of Prescott. Classic one-way in, one-way out. On any given summer day, there might be 200 or 300 kids out there, 50 or 60 staff. Well, about a year ago, the Forest Service fire bosses went out there as part of their assessment in the area, and they said, essentially, you have one option in a fire event. What do you suppose it is? Evac. That's it, period. Okay, that's a no-brainer, right? So we had the opportunity to work with some NRCS natural resource conservation funding, and we helped that camp practice forest stewardship. We did a very decisive thinning there in the spring. We collaborated with the Forest Service so that we were actually doing, we were landing, we were taking our thinned material onto the Forest Service with agreement, which was outstanding. We couldn't have done this project without collaborating with the Forest Service. But the upshot of it is that in the spring, we had a National Fire Directors review team come through the Prescott. These are fire directors from all over the nation. And prior to that, we had gone out with the Prescott National Forest fire staff. I mean, the men and women who know the stuff and do the do. And in the setting that they came upon after our thinning, what do you suppose their recommendation was to the camp? No, ma'am. What do you suppose their recommendation, what was their option? What did the camp now have an option to do? Shelter in place. The thinning was so, it wasn't a clear cut. It was a return towards a more natural condition. Instead of having 300 or 400 stems per acre and brush and ladder fuels and accumulated debris and all that stuff, we thinned it so that the camp setting was more enjoyable. Campers liked it. The counselors and stuff could actually see the kids out there. The feedback from the camp is, hey, this is a better place to be. People feel safe here. But here you've got the fire service telling this private camp, now you have an option to shelter in place, and in fact, it might be your best option. The camp also did something which was exemplary and necessary. They invested in structural improvement to reduce the receptivity to firebrands. Metal roofs, non-combustible siding, no combustibles up on the decks. They took care of those fire-wise elements, and they took it seriously. So now with a good forest stewardship program, we are prepared, and the Forest Service is really excited to put fire on the ground on both sides of the fence, and we will do it. And only after our forest stewardship thinning do we have an opportunity to do prescribed fire on that private property. And the Forest Service is digging it because they don't have to dig line down the fence line. We can get more work done. We can use participating agreements to work both sides of the fence so we actually return fire as it's meant to be on the ground. So and I use this as an illustration because this is a camp that has, 30 different structures on it. It's got overhead power lines, propane tanks, nice twisty, tight roads, no different than your community. And we are able to use forestry machines and forestry expertise in that urban setting. It can be done, and it can be done very well. So that's just an illustration of something that we're working on as our other forests to work with private landowners. This is truly collaboration, where we work together in the thinning, and then we're going to work together in the fire, in the burn. So thanks for a chance to share some thoughts.
So we had some latecomers. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Jeff Guthrie, Pima County Office of Emergency Management.
Hang on. And?
Hi, Mike Quigley, Arizona State Director for the Wilderness Society.
See, so we have everybody in our little group. And this is U of A.
Hi, I'm Jim Malusa. I'm a vegetation ecologist and mapper from the School of Natural Resources.
We weren't late. We were just hiding in back. Yeah. I'm Don Falk with the School of Natural Resources.
I'm Ann Uberg with the Arizona Geological Survey at the U of A. Yes, I'm also a cabin owner.
So not only does she have a lot invested because of who she is, but she also loves this mountain enough to go, you know what, I trust that this place is going to be here. I'm going to buy a cabin. So, CJ, do you have anything else?
Land like Prescott to protect Summerhaven so we don't have a fire like we did in 2003 again.
So doing this type of, so that's what Catalina Recon Firescape is. It's a large preventative measure, okay, to prevent something like the Aspen fire from happening again. That's basically why we're doing the work that we're doing.
So it seemed like the gentleman there already had some kind of plan for Prescott. It started like this.
I don't know exactly how they started their plan. If you want to talk about that, Rich, you can. But yes, it does start this way. This is how it starts, and then it grows. We have to build on it. We have to start small and then build on it as we go.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, we are NEPA approved. Sally Crum, who is our FireWise head honcho and doing a marvelous job, she has applied for a grant of Turkey Run, Sabino. So if you have a cabin up there, and I don't think any of you do, only because well, the Browns, but don't worry about them. Sorry, no offense, but y'all are good. But my point is, so we are good. And Sally has a grant that she's applied for. We're praying and praying that we're going to get that grant because, again, we're going to be working with Forest Service to get that clean because that's where our main watershed is. So remember, we're always doing something. So if you guys have questions like, how come I don't know what's going on? Ask. Because, I mean, these guys are here. And how many years has it been that we've gotten people in this building? We have Pima County, we got big wigs, we got bigger wigs. So we're doing something. So if you have questions, ask.
And one more thing, just to let you know, so treatment of this mountain won't happen overnight. You won't go to sleep one night, wake up the next day, and the whole place is treated and it's fire-wise and it's good to go. It's going to take time, and we can only do what our funding appropriation allows us to do. So we're prioritizing with the fire escape project. We're prioritizing areas around Summerhaven to better protect Summerhaven. So that's why you have Marshall Ghost. That's why you have Radio Ridge, that big fuel break going along Radio Ridge now. It looks like a couple of dozers went through there and just mowed it all down. And those are just hot shot crews going through there and doing what they do. And then Turkey Run, Summerhaven Northwest, and we'll just keep moving around the mountain, moving around the town to make sure that we protect you all.
Look at the residents,
And CJ can't smile.
So he had one more question. What can the residents do?
Yeah,
This is what we're doing.
Resources, so you have more to be able to.
I think that's why Bill brought us all here today. So
That's why we're all here.
Okay.
Okay, Bill?
I got one more question.
Go ahead.
How long does just one teepee pile take to burn down?
Depends. That's the answer. It depends. So it depends on how dry they are in terms of how quickly they consume.
Like, would you say 4 or 5 hours or overnight, like 8 hours?
It can vary. That's all I can tell. All I can tell you is about what the fuel conditions are at that particular time. We can go out there and maybe it takes a day and a half to burn a pile. Or we can go out there and maybe it takes a few hours to burn a pile. It just varies. Rich is going to answer your question.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your question on the planning, and always good to have a plan, right? So our department, the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, we work with private landowners to help support. We provide technical assistance in their work on forest stewardship. And we also have a partnership with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is a federal agency that has resources that we can put to private property practices. And they develop what's called a conservation plan. In the Prescott area, there's a long-time local group called the Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission. Their charge is to help private landowners reduce fire hazards. And essentially working with the POWIC, as they're called, we have developed a couple of Girl Scout camps and another private camp, and also the community of Crown King, which is up in the Bradshaws, which is some pretty extreme country. So the POWIC, which is that local not-for-profit, has been able to connect with NRCS to get the funding mechanism to put to these properties, these projects. And then we provide technical assistance to support that effort with planning. So here on Mount Lemmon, one could look at a plan that is relevant to the private investment and the Forest Service interspersed properties up here. But basically provide like a roadmap of where you all might want to go. The fire department here no doubt has an excellent idea, the Forest Service does. What's really kind of an exciting concept is that we have private property on federally leased land, which is not a bad thing. It might be a real keen opportunity to get some work done. So our department can support in developing a forest stewardship plan, or we can also help individual landowners or groups of landowners in doing what we call a practice plan, which is like a 2-page deal. You can do it in half an hour. It's really meant to help that landowner understand what they could and should do, and then it is handed off to Myra's crew to come in here and actually do the work. So the planning levels are kind of varied, but what's key is that they're becoming more integrated. And I'm quite keen to understand what the Forest Service's plan is for the mountaintop here and see if there's a way that we can really collaborate and add to our success. Mark Grell has some comments that he'd like to share on the Flagstaff area and some of their planning efforts.
So, you hear me?
Yeah.
So yeah, in Flagstaff, we've been really active with thinning and prescribed fire. It is our #1 threat, probably the #1 most threatened community in Arizona. That's what we used to say. I think we're a little better now. But there are lots of levels and layers of planning, like the skin of an onion here. And so, like what Rich is alluding to, is that some of the plans that we could work with would tie into what they have planned here with the fire escape effort and be able to find that synergy in areas where we can increase efficiencies and get more done, and where we can find areas that we can work across the fence and we can help facilitate the work with CJ and Kerwin and their plans to bring in some of the specific needs that you have in your private property and in other areas around here that we might be able to assist in with federal treatments. What were you talking about specifically in planning I wanted to talk about?
Well, you know, the Flagstaff Water Protection Plan, you know, I mean, it came out of a fire, Schultz fire.
Yeah, and all these things have, you know, constantly growing into something else. So, you know, there has been the Forest Management Plan, and I work with a nonprofit called the Greater Flagstaff Forest Partnership, and we did a lot of work on planning the area around Flagstaff. We specifically were looking at 180,000 acres around Flag, and really have seen a lot of implementation in that. But there are a lot of areas that are hard to actually treat. Steep slopes, where you have low value material, very costly operations, you have the erosion issues, social issues, wildlife issues. And so, you know, what has happened around Flag and a lot of the rest of the country is the easier ground where you can get more done has been treated. But these areas here, and like some of the areas hanging above Flagstaff, have sort of hung out there. And as you guys may be aware of, 2010 we had the Schultz fire in Flagstaff. And kind of similar to one of the slides Bill had, and you know, the costs, that was 12,000 acres, $15 million in suppression costs, but the full total cost right now is pushing $150 million. And just last week had more flooding impacting another 40 houses. We did have 2 losses of life in 2010 from the flooding. And that really kind of woke people up in Flags, that we looked at our steep slopes and the areas where we couldn't get to, and we knew we needed to, but we just couldn't do it with the money we had and the resources, and we had other high priority areas around communities. But we realized that that was a huge problem, and Forest Service didn't have the money to do that treatment. It's not that they didn't recognize the issue or couldn't do it, but it's trying to use those dollars most effectively. And so we came to the city voters in 2012 with a proposition for a municipal bond based upon secondary property taxes for city residents to tax themselves to do work outside of the city limits on federal land. And even in a very conservative climate with some fiscally conservative people on city council, everybody was on board, and it was pretty much a no-brainer, and it passed by 74% of city voters, which is, in my mind, is pretty close to 100, because there's always some you're never going to get when you're talking about taxes or cutting trees. So that's, you know, is a growth off of some of the plans we already had in effect. And concurrently with that, with the Greater Flagstaff Forest Partnership, another project that spawned off of the collaboration we had there was the Forest Restoration Initiative, which is looking at about 2 million acres on the Kaibab, Coconino, Tonto, and Apache Segraves National Forest. So there are lots of plans. And then as, you know, a state partner working with our federal partners and working with our private landowners, and you know what Rich does as a service forester and my job and other people on Myra, is we try to find, you know, the links where we can bridge these gaps between what's happening in the communities and what the federal entities are able to do. So there are a lot of layers, and I'm sure, you know, what we're really here to do is to figure out what's going on here, where are the opportunities where we can find a way that we can insert ourselves to help benefit the forest and benefit you guys. So it's been great. We toured around today. It's my first time up here since right after the Aspen fire, so it looks quite different than what I remember. And I don't want to see what it looked like before. I know you guys don't. We've seen enough of that all over the country today even. So very interested to learn more from you guys, and hopefully we can really come together and put our minds together with some creativity and come together with a good plan. Yes, sir. Well, I'm employed by Department of Forestry and Fire Management, and then the DFFM here, so Jeff's my boss. And then I work with the Greater Flagstaff Forest Partnership. I'm the president of that, and that's an NGO founded in 1996. Our NGO, well, that started from fires. In 1996 was a huge fire year in the Southwest, as much of the West saw. And at the time, I think everybody around town was loving their trees to death. There were ordinances and HOAs and around town prohibiting cutting trees. And that was the big no-no. And then in 96, when you could sit on the steps of City Hall and see multiple smoke plumes in any direction, it was kind of the wake-up call to everybody, and we all got together and realized that we've got a problem. We all have sort of different interests, but we all have the same problem. And how do we work together? So we created our NGO as a unified voice to work with the Forest Service to find synergy and complementary activities among what we desired, but also we wanted to make it easier for the forest to work with one coordinated group instead of 26 different entities that are going to be firing at them from all directions. And so our funding, we get a little bit of funding from the county and the city, and then above that we're largely grant funded for on-the-ground mitigation, and we get some other money from the Fire Adapted Communities Learning Network, which is a national network that we use for advancing this kind of discussion and trying to bring people together to learn from each other and create awareness and support for what we're trying to do here.
Thank you very much. One thing I failed to mention in the previous slides is the fact of the matter is that at an absolute minimum, we're looking at 350 million acres of understory and ladder fuels that are going to catch fire over the next 10 years. And most people living in cities in the metro areas, they understand the tragedy of losing forests. But in the documentation that I read through here, there's a lot of letters from water conservation groups that are pleading with Congress to do something about the fires in our forests. Because most of these conservation groups are in the Northern California area or Utah and a variety of areas. And they're telling our congressmen the fact of the matter is these forests will end up destroying our watersheds. And so what does that mean? Well, you destroy our watersheds, it's going to hit Phoenix and it's going to hit Tucson. So these fires are going to directly affect our water taps. So it's important to pay attention to exactly what these fires mean to each one of us. My son graduated from U of A as a chemical engineer. And I promised him when he was a kid that when he graduated from college, I'd take him to New York City. And it was a wonderful trip, 5-day trip. One of the places I'm going to take a cue from you, CJ, I'm going to walk around. It's a lot easier. And one of the trips, or one of the places we went to see was the Natural History Museum. And I walked in the main door from Central Park, and I turned to my left, and I looked like a stroke victim. I just stand there with my mouth wide open, looking at the wall, staring at it. And it was a note from Teddy Roosevelt. I'd like you to bring up that note, and I'm going to read it. Nature. There is a delight in the hardy life of the open. There are no words that can tell the hidden spirit of the wilderness that can reveal the mystery, its melancholy, and its charm. The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets which it must turn over to the next generation, increased and not impaired in value. Conservation means development as much as it does protection. I'm going to read that last line one more time. Conservation means development as much as it does protection. Teddy Roosevelt. He's the guy that started all this. One of the first things he did when he went ahead and put together the National Forest was he built roads, he built lodges, he built areas for people to enjoy the forest. He knew that the forest could not survive on its own simply by logging. He knew that it had to be developed. Next slide, please. All the emails that I sent you, I had accessibility, measurability, repeatability, sustainability, and for the love of God, if somebody can give me a rhyme that means publicity and rhymes with the rest of these, I'll buy them lunch. Accessibility, Mount Lemmon. It's accessible by 27 miles of road, 40 minutes. I can do it in 35. Lee, don't say anything. Okay? Measurability. There's several places on that mountain that Dr. Falk and his crew can measure everything from the increase in water or decrease in water to habitat to anything we can measure, from an unhealthy mountain to a healthy mountain. He's got a team put together along with Mike Quigley that they're ready to go ahead and try and determine what exactly is going to happen to a mountain when we go from 1,200 trees, and of course, Dr. Falk said he's seen 4,000 trees in certain areas, down to 80 trees per acre. The whole university, wildlife organizations are ready to go ahead and put together a study for us and for the rest of the nation to prove once and for all that a healthy forest can exist. Repeatability. We can continue to do that. Every so many years, we can run the data and prove again and again and again that we can improve our watershed by having a healthy forest. Sustainability, I'm going to get into that in a moment, and that's the exciting part of this whole presentation. I know I was a little slow on the start, but the back end of this thing is like, it's like a ball game. It's the last half of the season, and we're ready to go. Publicity, we need the media. The media's got to educate the general public, and that's you folks back there. Hopefully you're not taking a nap. You got to educate the general public. It's your responsibility to teach them what the heck's going on with our forests. That 350 million acres is not just some contrived number. We're in desperate shape. We have got the next decade of hellacious fires that are killing people. And they're drying up our watersheds. We're going to be hurting. And it's costing us millions upon millions of dollars. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, it's going to affect all of us. And we're going to be hurting. And we need your help desperately. Next slide, please. Mount Lemmon, International Laboratory for the Healthy Forest Initiative. Hopefully you guys will print this, publish it, and start releasing information about it. Get people interested. This mountain has 7 biomes. Nowhere in North America can you find 4,000 species of plants and animals. How extraordinary is it that east of the Mississippi, you only have 3,000 plants and animals, species of plants and animals, where this mountain produces 4,000. What a loss it would be if this mountain goes up in flames. We have people from all over the world just to come and see the birds. And I've talked about that at the very last. Just to come see the birds. It's unbelievable. Next slide, please. This could be our chance. We have all walks of life, Forest Service, Pima County, federal and state, University of Arizona, Wildlife Society, community, urban interface. Go down the list. We have everybody together. Senator Gail Griffin. We have everybody in one room willing to roll up their sleeves, get together, and develop a mountain to prove once and for all that a healthy forest can exist. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a small footprint. It won't cost the federal government that much money, not like the Pierce Amendment, where there's 3 national forests. No wonder they turned their back on Mr. Pierce. It's just too damn expensive right now. But this isn't. This could be a shining example for the entire United States. And you know what? People have come up to me from other areas of the world asking to write articles before this even starts to talk about our mountain. Before it even starts. It's unbelievable. Next slide. Catalina Rincon Fire Escape. We've already been NEPA approved. We don't have to go through the regulations. All we need is the money. My fear is Fire Escape has been approved. With all the hellacious fires that are going to happen over the next 10 years, we're not going to have the money. We're going to run out of money, and we're going to be sitting here next year looking at where in the hell we're going to get the money to finish the job. And we're going to have our hat in our hand, wondering how in the heck we're going to do it. We're going to be in the same place again. We're going to be working with Pima County, putting out mobile signs. We're going to be going through the same heartache, and we're going to go through the same fear. I want to clean this mountain up once and for all. That we can all take a deep sigh of breath and say, the fire's never going to come up this mountain again. It's clean, it's healthy. It's an example for the entire world, not just the United States. Next slide, please. So, the master plan is already in place. Protecting values, structures, culture sites, baseline data collection, forest-wide fuel reduction, data collection, publication, ongoing management and natural fires, maintenance thinning, self-sustaining, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We have to have capital to go ahead and reinvest into this mountain. Once we clean this mountain up, and God, I hope we get the money to clean it up and clean it up quickly. We have to have money to go ahead and continue to do it every 2 to 3 or 4 years. And we have to be sophisticated about it, and we need the help of the university, and we need the help of the wildlife organizations, and we need the help of the Forest Service, hand in hand, developing new techniques and new ways of handling the forest so others can follow us. We're pioneering new ways of working forest management. This is a new way of doing things. It's not the old way. And we've got the talent right here today that can do it. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I get so excited. It's a collaboration from groups and partnerships. And I do mean partnerships. Conservation and environmental groups, Forest Service, Fish and Game, universities, local community, Pima County, City of Tucson, State of Arizona, federal funding, grant programs, destination developers and/or developer and investment bankers. One project that was so successful was the Baltimore Harbor, the Rouse Company and Oppenheimer Properties, which I had the pleasure to work with in my 30s. Oh, sorry. Where do you want me to stand? Okay. We need to vet a worldwide developer. This project is bigger than any local developer. This project needs to find a developer that's cash heavy, that won't run out of money halfway through. They can put a master plan together that will be able to fund and run this thing all the way through and run it through quickly in partnership with the federal government and the state government and working with the local community and everybody involved. This is bigger than all of us, and we need to vet somebody that's worthwhile. We need an investment banker that'll fund this project. This is not just putting a little drugstore or a small ski shop in. This is developing the entire mountain. So this is bigger than all of us. But it's also a footprint or step forward for the entire country to show the country that you can develop a forest to self-support. Next slide, please. Here's one of the main problems. We have our Forest Service. Kerwin, I don't see you in there, but I'm sorry. I tried to find it, but I couldn't put you in there. But what happens is the Forest Service up here derives some revenue. It either goes to Albuquerque or it goes to Washington, D.C., disappears. Nobody knows where it goes. What we need to do is have legislation where the funds that are developed on specifically this mountain, any money that's developed on this mountain, stays on this mountain and is redeveloped in this mountain. Kerwin, how many people do you employ right now?
Forest-wise, about 200, 220.
How many people do you need? No, tell me the truth.
Well, we could probably lose about another 50 to 60 people on top.
Right. You know, when you ask that question and you go out and you talk to different forest managers and supervisors, how in the hell do they even know what's going on in their forest when they're underemployed? You know, I ask that question, you know, in corporations. I've dealt with startups. And if they don't have the employment or the staff, how do they expect to be successful? There's no way in hell. I mean, if you don't have your staff, you're already 3 steps behind. I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't. You don't have the equipment, you don't have the investment, you don't have the staff. It's got to be demoralizing.
I could say it's tough, Bill, but what I would say is we have a lot of staff in this room right here.
Yep.
And so without your partnership, which I'm a big fan of partnerships because we can't do anything by ourselves, and so the Forest Service is not just a unit within itself. I need the university, I need the state, I need the communities.
We got your back. We got your back, and with this type of plan, we could add staff and we could add equipment, and we sure in hell could have a better forest simply because we'd have the numbers of people. Next slide, please. So, urban interface and planning. This is one of the only mountains that you have deeded property on the top of the mountain. It's kind of interesting. Master plan, retail, restaurants, downtown, infrastructure for water. It has to be expandable. We have to go ahead and research and find new facilities to expand our water. We need to update our water. We need to update our wastewater plant. That needs to be expandable. Traffic and parking, we're already working on with Pima County, but that needs to be expandable. Gondola for the mountain, multiple uses, which we can get into. Commercial development, unique opportunities, residential development, innovative housing, entertainment center, multiple venues, family snow zip line, mountain bike center, camping sites, sky lodge sites, glamping sites, which I can't wait to get into. Hotels, dude ranch, expansion of our highway, better bike path, movie and media industries. Next slide, please. Downtown Summerhaven. What it could look like. I know you're all laughing, and you're all shaking your head. I don't want that much congestion, but if we're not significant, we'll burn out. You won't have Summerhaven. Okay? So you have a choice. And a lot of the development will be outside of Summerhaven, not in your backyard. But I guarantee you, if you don't develop Summerhaven, like they said in Pima County back 5 months ago, one person walked up to me, if you don't develop and grow Summerhaven, you won't have Summerhaven. So that's the reality. And that's a reality you have to face. You won't be here 5 years from now. Next slide. Oh, jeez. Mount Lemon Family Snow Park. Next slide. Mountain Bike and Zip Line Park. Lee, he's outside? Lee, oh, okay. Next line. Mount Lemon World-Class Hotel. Next line. Mount Lemon Gondola. There's just too much traffic on that highway, especially when I'm driving on it. Next one. Mount Lemon Sky Lodge Adventures. That's hanging bedrooms right off the side of a cliff. And breakfast. Next line. Here's glamour plus camping, glamping. Go ahead and laugh. Next slide. That's less than a mile from the Statue of Liberty. That's part of the national, God, what is it? Part of the Statue of Liberty. Next line. Mount Lemon Tiny Homes, affordable housing. This guy produces them in Ireland. He throws them in a shipping crate, sends them out. 80,000 a pop. But I bet you could make them Firewise with a little innovative thinking. Next line. Again, $80,000 a house. Next line. Weddings on Mount Lemon. Next line. Concerts on Mount Lemon. Next line. Mount Lemon Dude Ranch. Now you may think that's funny, but there's already been looking that wants to put a dude ranch up here. Next line. 1986, 1980, 1967. Three Amigos, Tom Horn, and Hombre. We need to start bringing movies back on the Catalinas. And next line. Technology. Now, Matt Grossman is our technical whiz kid, and I know that because he's got nerd on his license plate. Matt, do you want to go through the next?
Sure. So there we go. We've started by evaluating a bunch of technologies to solve some of the problems Bill mentioned earlier. First is trying to do something a little bit more productive than burning with some of the waste wood that's being generated. There we go. So one option that we found is conversion of biomass into electricity. What we have up here right now is not commercially viable for almost any other use. It's too small for lumber. Pulp mills for paper production are generally speaking located in the southeast part of the country. There are also a handful in the northwest, but trucking all of that material to them just doesn't make economic sense. And the already partially burnt timber has limited uses. We happen to have a utility feeder to the grid right by the fire station, and there's already a connection there for the backup generator. So what we found is this nice portable unit right here, which can be placed out by the fire station and can generate 100 kilowatts of electricity off of burned waste matter. And then down the road, a larger unit can be installed at the bottom of the mountain in San Manuel, which has feeder lines to it already from the old smelter and has an economic need for jobs. We also need to, as Bill said, improve our water system capacity. One way to do that is a village-wide gray water system. Most of our cabins are set up so that the plumbing is accessible, unlike in Tucson where it tends to be buried inside of your slab. So we can convert the wastewater treatment plant to feed gray water back out in through a separate set of pipes all the way into our cabins so that when we're flushing toilets, we're not using drinkable water. If we're watering plants, we're not using drinkable water. Our storage capacity is already upgradable, and additional tanks can certainly be added. And hydrant and mainline upgrades can be accomplished while trenches are open. Another brand new technology at industrial scale are industrial scale atmospheric water harvesting devices such as this. This is made by an Israeli company. They started out by producing water for military units out in the Israeli desert. And they've scaled things up to the point where we can place these next to our water tanks at the top of the hills and create drinkable water from the clouds that pass by but don't drop anything on us. And if they can produce drinkable water in the middle of the Israeli desert, then up here it should be fairly simple. Now, to offset the power consumption and the carbon footprint of these devices, we're also proposing installing some wind turbines or other alternative energy sources up here so that after the bulk of the biomass is burned off, we're not increasing the carbon footprint or the power draw by generating our water this way. Another technology we've been evaluating is imaging and remote sensing. We already have a high-speed data network available up here, and using a combination of visible and infrared cameras and machine learning, we can spot smokes without having human intervention and in ways that humans can't. So this is a sample technology developed by a Chinese company. There are American equivalents as well, but these folks have actually been deploying it specifically for fire identification. And this is a sample of one of our existing cameras. Applying an artificial intelligence algorithm to this, we can look for differences that might indicate smoke and possibly even isolate the differences between that and, say, fog or clouds so that the Forest Service can be notified as quickly as possible, or since this faces into town, the fire department, so that small fires can be contained or managed, depending on the situation, well in advance of them growing. The same technologies on a smaller scale can be used instead of for visual data for things such as air temperature and humidity sensing, visibility sensing, soil condition sensing, so that we can get a mountain-wide picture of what's going on. And the folks sitting down in Tucson in Sabino Canyon or downtown at the Forest Service office can get a good idea of what's going on within the areas where they normally can't see. We're also proposing installing a dedicated FM broadcast station up here. One of the issues that we have right now with potential evacuations, we have a reverse 911 system and the next door system, and the county has some other options. However, those all are dependent on communication lines being open and cell phones and landlines being available. 100 watts of FM can cover pretty much all of the occupied areas of the mountain, and we found some devices that can be deployed at places like the Boy Scout camp or even in individual cabins that can be triggered automatically to turn on loudspeakers so that should an evacuation be necessary, or for that matter, should the road be closed due to a traffic hazard or something like that, we can get the information out. We're also proposing additional electronic signage departing Summerhaven and Palisades and at the community center so that we can let folks up here know, again, where those traffic congestion issues exist, so that we can keep people off of the highway and prevent those huge backups whenever there's for example, an airlift of an injured motorist off of the mountain. And we can improve the ability for the Forest Service, the Sheriff's Department, and the Fire Department to access those directly. Bill?
leave you with one last story. Mary Lou and I were walking down Carter Canyon, and 2 years ago, we ran into a family. They were an Asian family, could hardly speak a lick of English. And my wife is, how should I say this? Gregarious. And everybody's her friend. So anyway, she started up a conversation with one of the people. It was a big family. And started talking. They were all, hi, just said like that. And started talking and so on and so forth. And, where are you from? And finally, one of them said, well, we're from mainland. Hello? Mainland China. Okay? Mainland China. And she asked them, why are you here? To see the birds. We love the birds. See the birds. Can you imagine if we had a healthy mountain? And remember this. This will be the first healthy mountain in North America on the planet. How many people will come to this mountain to see a healthy mountain? Because you've got to remember, there's no healthy mountain anywhere. Nobody living today has seen a healthy mountain. How many people will come to southern Arizona, come to Tucson, to see a healthy mountain? Just our tourism alone will go right through the roof. Nobody has seen a healthy mountain. We can promote Tucson and Mount Lemmon as the first healthy mountain. Okay, doctor. Go ahead.
I just want to add a really important takeaway from this discussion. If we had passed out a paper at the beginning of this meeting saying, how would you like fire on your mountain? And there was a bunch of boxes you could check, there would be no box that said no fire. You all understand that, right? No fire is not an option. That was the philosophy of the 10 o'clock policy, and it was either ineffective or disastrous. So let's remember, you all have been here long enough to know this, there is not a no fire option. And so I'm here as a forest scientist to say, put your faith and trust in Kurt Winfrey. Put your faith and trust in Zeke. Put your faith and trust in Chris Stutson and Chris Teal and the other staff of the National Forest. Jeff Whitney in the State Forester's office. Put your faith and trust in the people who do this for a living and know how to keep this mountain both healthy and safe. And that is going to be our way forward.
You all know what's going on in Northern California right now? Yeah. How many of you heard about that?
Yeah.
How many of you heard about what happened in Northern and Southern California last year? How many of you know what's been happening in Colorado this year? We don't want that. So the way forward is through the work of these professionals that have decades of experience to find a way not only to put prescribed fire on the ground, but when a natural ignition does happen, to allow it possibly to burn more safely. And that is a critical tightrope that we're walking right now. And as we've said before, we don't have much time. So I encourage you all to give your full support to the National Forest and the State Forester to find our way out of this situation right now.
So I'm going to wrap this up. I don't have any stories. One time I was 6. So we're going to thank you for coming. We're a working meeting. Does anyone have any questions before you leave? Steve Brigham. Meet me halfway. I came like all the way across.
Good afternoon. Steve Brigham with the Loma Sabino Homeowners Association. I just want to emphasize a couple of things. One, it has been a great year for a lot of reasons. One, Summerhaven didn't burn down. I think it's important to know that even though we didn't have the big fire, my understanding is that we had a lot of little fires. And so when we talk about master plans and world-class hotels and everything else, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this whole team needs a lot of support for a couple of basic things that I just want to throw out there. There's nothing more discouraging than calling 911 about a neighbor that has a fire in an outdoor fire pit during fire season, and they're allowed to do that because it's private property. I want to make sure we're moving forward with some kind of local ordinance rules, and I know everybody's aware of this, so that we can enforce some of this and not be at risk from idiot fires. The other thing is we had such great success with communications. I mean, this year there were the signs, there was publicity about no fires, no smoking, which was terrific, but there was no communication about what happens if you do start a fire, if you do throw the cigarette out. I want to make sure that the next fire season we put as much emphasis into what are the fines and making sure that our enforcement people really have the power to charge people the appropriate cost for these kind of idiot fires and risks. So I want to make sure at least those two things are emphasized. But thanks for pulling all this together, and hopefully we can make some progress on all the world-class things that I saw on the screen. Thank you.
So we do have, hang on, we did get, I'm the president of the Mount Lemmon Business Economics, so don't even say anything because none of you else stepped up for it. My point, anyways, so Pima County did give us a banner. Yeah, we were a little late in the game, but guess what? We're going to be fire hazard next year and the year prior. So Pima County, we do have a banner that's going to go up next year. They also gave us the road, they look like road construction signs, working with Forest Service saying no cigarettes, no smoking. So it's an ongoing thing. Right now, we're not meeting with Pima County. We just had our meeting last week because we're not stage 2. But, I mean, our relationship with Forest Service has changed crazy. Like, I don't even think my dad has anything negative to say, which is, you know, he's not here. But you know what I mean? I mean, everyone has been like, wah. But my point is we're moving forward. We're going to get things. So right now we're good to go, hopefully. But like Steve said, don't have a fire just because I own this property. Who cares? You don't own his lot. And how far can embers fly? A mile. More than a mile. So a lot of us homeowners went through and did the whole fire-wise, you know, cabin thing. We did that. Sally and I did that. Matthew was there. Joe was there. And so we're learning ourselves. So if we come to you and we're yelling at you because, hey, you need to be fire-wise, we're not kidding. We don't care if your lot burns. If you don't care if your lot doesn't burn, I don't want my mountain to burn. And I don't want your mountain to be able to burn. So just don't be selfish and think about other people as well. Is there any other questions for Pima County Forest Service? Yes, you have a lot of questions. Where have you been?
Community, what is our next step?
As a community, our next step is we're just keep going. We're doing our meetings. Where'd Bill go? He's got lots to say. I mean, I think right now what we're trying to find out is what can we get to, you know, we're waiting to see Sally's grant, if that goes through, and that'll clean up there. So as a community, we're still working with Forest Service. We're still getting together, doing that kind of stuff. We're working with Pima County. So as a community, it's our responsibility to watch your property and your neighbor's property. There's so many people that don't use their cabins up here. Drive through. I mean, Forest Service cabins, no offense. They don't use, a lot of those people don't use their cabins. So instead of coming to your cabin, turning on your Simply Bits, your DirecTV, and sitting there and opening the windows going, I love this. Get out and walk around and check your neighbor's property. You don't have to clean it, but go and look around. No, I'm being serious. I mean, you have to go and, oh, so-and-so has a lot of stuff, blah, blah, blah. We're trying to do the clean and lean, so we're working on that. But we started with, like, baby steps. So now we're kind of going bigger steps, bigger steps. So we are working towards trying to get everything cleaned up. What? We're best friends. We're already best friends.
I'm in the district, okay? I know Tucson, I come up here. Okay, you guys are a Firewise community. Sally is doing a really good job in making you guys captains, and the main thing is, it makes you powerful, is education. Educating yourself and educating others. Yeah, maybe the one person that comes once a year, well, if you see him about once a year, knock on his door and tell him what's going on this mountain. You know, and I understand Bill's trying to get money in here. I don't know, maybe figure out how to help him. I don't know, but this, I've seen, yeah, you can build an NGO, yes, you can. But right now, you have a Firewise community. Right now, we have a CWPP. In here, in Mount Lemmon, we have a plan already in place for your private lands, not just Firescape. Now that we have Firescape, it can be a blend. We're here, we're already working. We got crews out here. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it could be in a few years. This is a slow-moving thing, and bringing in fire and bringing in what it really is naturally. Really, you guys need to know, we're in the drought. I don't know. We're in drought here. Trees are suffering from not having water. We got U of A here. These guys are studying and learning and what is going on. That's your power, is that education, and asking and having meetings and bringing us in. So next meeting, maybe we could talk about the drought or something like that. It's just part of it. So you guys, Sally, use Sally. Firewise is really, it's already a nationally program for you guys, so you guys can have a voice. That's what it's meant for, okay?
Thank you. If due to Sally's efforts, I don't know how to use one of these, but she has lessons. If she gets the grant for cleaning up the Turkey Run private land, is there any plan for that watershed further up? Is that being talked about among the hierarchy? Is it really on schedule? Okay.
Yeah, it's our next project that will link in with that.
Okay, I
yes,
guess.
It will link in with that. So
Okay.
we treat around private property, and then that will help move us up onto adjacent forest land.
Great, I appreciate that. I probably wasn't listening.
So I can give where I came from in Las Vegas. What the community did there. So a community like this, in terms of Mount Charleston, on top of Mount Charleston, what they did was put together a license plate grant, which the Forest Service can't directly apply for projects for, but our partners apply for projects for. So they put together a license plate grant to produce revenue for us to be able to treat, or our partners to be able to do treatments on our land. So that's just one option. That's just one thing I've seen work.
That's awesome. Let's go. Anyone else?
Yeah, before we wrap up, Bill mentioned the legislation that was before Congress, what was it?
2936.
2936. So that did pass the House on November 1st, 2017, in a 232 to 188 vote. Congresswoman McSally voted for it. I just wanted to close the loop on that.
Right.
But also, this is an extraordinary meeting, I think. I don't know if Bud Foster is still here, but I was a newspaper reporter when the Aspen fire happened, and I covered President Bush's visit to, I think it was Inspiration Point, where he came and announced a forest plan. You know, I'm sure a lot has changed in the last 15 years, but I think meetings like this are probably one of the best steps, as you suggested, to educating people. You know, this is a great gathering because there are governments at different levels, federal, state, county agencies, county departments, state lawmakers. I mean, things like this are, I think, a great way to just keep talking about stuff like this. Is in itself progress. You asked about the next step. Keeping meetings like this going. You know, I don't know if Bill's grand plans are ever going to be a reality, but whether or not they become a reality doesn't make any difference. Mount Lemmon is an important part of Pima County. It's woven into the fabric of this community. I think for the nearly million people who live in the Tucson metro area, whether or not they come here regularly or not, it's still something in our minds, this refuge, this place. So when something happens to Mount Lemmon, something happens to the community. So I think you have community support, whether or not people come up here and eat pie or go, biking or, taking advantage of the tremendous opportunities that are up here. But keeping meetings like this going, I think, are important. When you have groups like the, departmental groups that are willing to sit at the same table with state and federal agencies and private property owners to come up with solutions, to think about ideas, that in and of itself is a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Melanie?
Just talking about that license plate program, that sounds really cool. How do you get it started?
CJ, how do you get the license plate thing started?
I have no clue. I'll be honest with you. It was just something that was done on the last district I was on by the public, by the residents of Mount Charles. And
I think Sally Crum. She just raised her hand and said she's going to Google that, and we are going to have a competition. It's on.
I asked Sally to stop volunteering for so much stuff.
What is a license?
Because I have nothing else going on.
What is a license plate program?
Jenny. There's a license plate program. We're going to look into that. Okay, Leanne Mack. Sorry, just because you know what, she's going to be on the fire board. Leanne Mack just said that she's going to look into this. So when you see it on next door, this isn't a gossip. This is real. Leanne Mack's going to look into it. She's going to put it on the echoes, and we will work together and get that something going on with it.
Special license plate takes legislation, so it's a $25 fee. There's a limited amount for maintenance and operations through the Department of Transportation, but the rest then would come to that entity. You have to raise so much money to begin with for the plate, but then $17.50 out of the 25 comes to the organization. So I can help with it.
So Leanne and Gail are going to become best friends. Who has $25? All right, $25. Here. Ooh, I look at me.
Would you take 30?
I'll take 60. So that's another thing. The businesses have also been talking to Rebecca Davidson. She is with the National Forest Foundation. And what the businesses do is they put towards a certain amount of money. And so we are working. Things are working. Not everything's going to be out there because you guys are doing your thing. We're doing our thing. And this is why we're having a meeting to let you know this is what we've done. All right?
Do we set up another meeting or make it bi-monthly?
Well, you were not making a lot of friends by having all these meetings. You understand that, right? You realize that Bill and Matt and my dad and I have met in Phoenix. We've gone to Martha McSally, Jeff Flake's office. We're all over the place. That will be on next door. So we'll have another meeting. And once we get some information, once we have something to tell you, we'll have another meeting. All right, thank you guys.
Great job,